So how's it going? In today's tutorial, you are going to learn how to paint this beautiful dot mandala design on an old bottle. Now I'm using an old wine bottle, but you could just use whatever you have. So I knew that I wanted the bottle to be purple, and I thought it would probably be best to paint the inside of the bottle rather than the outside, just so it stays nice and completely smooth. So I'm really just experimenting here. I had never painted the inside of a bottle. I am mixing some multi-surface acrylic paint. This is neon purple and this is the Folk Art brand. And I'm mixing it with a little bit of flow medium, just because I figured the consistency of the paint would need to be pretty thin in order to, really coat all the sides and flow down the sides correctly. So this worked fine. You pour it in, you shake it around. I did have to make a little bit more, and then as I poured it in, I rotated the bottle so it would run down all the different sides. And I did cap it with my hand, and paint gets on your hand, but no big deal, just wipe it off. And it looks beautiful, but then I realized after I let it sit, it had ran, and there was bare spots and then see-through spots. So I just decided, you know what, let's just go ahead and pour regular thick, undiluted paint on the inside of the bottle and just let it run down. And that worked way, way better. It coated the bottle, it stayed on, and it did take a little bit more paint, but it was worth it, and the outcome is absolutely beautiful. I also used a little bit of the Color Shift paint in Purple Flash. I don't know if you can see that blue shimmer there. It is just so pretty. I love this paint so much. And today's design is going to be made with all homemade tools that you probably have already at your house. A toothpick, a cotton swab, and some pencils. So what you do is you take all the cotton off of one end of your cotton swab, and that way you get down to the stick. And I just put a little bit of acrylic paint on there just to kind of hold down any fuzzies. And on the cotton end, you go ahead and put a little bit more paint and just smear it down the shaft of the Q-tip there. And then I just kind of flatten out the tip of it. And so you wind up with 5 different sizes. So a large pencil eraser, a regular pencil eraser, the cotton end, the stick end of a cotton swab, and a toothpick. Now if you want more options, I do have a 12-piece acrylic rod set in my shop, in my web store, the Art Depot. I will put a link in this video's description below for these. And here are the paints that we'll be using in today's tutorial. Now these are all multi-surface paints, which just means that you can put these in a regular oven and bake the paint on according to your particular brand's instructions. And the paint will form a permanent bond with the glass. The first color I'm going to use here for the center dot is called Light Lavender. And I'm going to be using the largest pencil eraser. I'm just trying to find the seam of the bottle, and it just kind of helps you to keep your lines straight. And just use a damp cloth to clean your eraser off. You do want to always have a good clean tool before you move on. Alright, for the first ring of dots around the center dot, we're going to be going with titanium white and using a toothpick. Now you want to place a dot to the top, to the bottom, to the left, and to the right, just kind of like a crisscross. And then you're going to place one dot in between each of those, and then again one more dot between each of those. And if you mess up, it's no big deal. Just use a damp cotton swab and roll the paint up and away from the bottle, and you're good to go. So you're going to have a total of 16 dots in a ring around your center dot. You can even reuse your toothpick if you clean it off. Just kind of dab it off. Now I'm mixing a little bit of paint here. This is a paint called Eggplant, another paint called Magenta, and then I'm going to brighten them up just a little bit with some titanium white. And you can make this your own by using whatever colors you feel fit. Now I'm using the stick end of the cotton swab, and I'm going to be placing a dot to the top, to the bottom, the left and the right, and then one in between each of those. So a crisscross and then one in between each of those. A total of 8 dots for your second ring. Again, just clean it off with a damp cloth. Now I'm going in with the toothpick and placing one smaller dot right in between each of those larger dots there. And that is using that same paint mixture. To keep this bottle from rolling, I'm placing a little bit of kneaded eraser to one side. Alright, for the next paint, it's called patina, and we're using the regular size pencil eraser. And you're just going to place a dot right in between each of those larger 8 dots there. So you just want them offset of the previous row. For the next step, we're going to be making what I refer to as a little bridge around the larger dot. And how you do that is you dip your toothpick into some paint, you make your first initial dot on the center of the outer edge of the larger green dot, and then you're going to dot all the way down to the base of one side. Then you redip your tool into the paint again, redot your first initial dot, and then dot all the way down to the base of the other side. And you're going to do that to all of the 8 larger dots, and it'll start looking like a little petal. For the next row of dots, I'm going to mix a little bit of blue peacock paint and some patina paint together. And I'm going to be using the large pencil eraser. Go ahead and place one dot right in between each of the little lacy looking bridges there, right in between each petal. Alright, going in with the cotton end of the cotton swab, go ahead and use that same paint mixture and place one dot right in between each of the larger blue dots all the way around. The next color, we're going back with the light lavender, and that is the large pencil eraser. Then the stick end of the Q-tip, and just place a dot right on the center of the outer edge as best as you can. You know, none of this has to be perfect. Is it perfect? No. Is it beautiful? Yes, absolutely. So don't be too hard on yourself. Just go with the flow. I am using the regular size pencil eraser here, going back with that, you know, that pink color that we had mixed. And I'm going to swipe in towards the center dot here. So I'm just using my toothpick and doing my best to swipe it in, and then I kind of like drag a little bit from each side down to the very tip. We're just kind of eyeballing the placement of those dots to be kind of right in between the smaller purple dots there, lavender dots. And then I'm going in and placing a dot to either side of that swipe with the cotton end of the Q-tip there, and swiping those in as close as I can get them to the larger swipe there on each side. I think what's helpful for the swipes to have a smaller tip on the end is to just leave it alone. Like, the less you drag down there all the way to the tip, the smaller the tip will stay. So if you're wanting a really pointy tip, just swipe down once, and then when you swipe down the sides, don't go all the way to the tip. I'm adding a small little swipe of that light lavender right on top of the wet pink paint, and that worked out pretty well. And then going back with the patina green and sticking a dot about a half of an inch out in between little swipe fronds, I think is what they're called. I don't know what they're called. And we're going to turn those into swipes as well. So again, just kind of dragging some paint towards the center. And I'm going to add a small little swipe of the blue paint mixture right in the middle of the green, followed up by a dot of the blue to either side, and then swiping those in as well. You kind of get better at the swipes with practice too, so you could practice on the side before you jump in, and that'll boost your confidence a little bit. And then I do swirl the paint out in the center there, and then just do the opposite with the green paint on top of the blue. And then this is a beautiful pearl paint, which I was really happy to find. And I'm just going to make consecutive dots all the way out until they just kind of fade away, like little arms or little hands going around each of the little swipe fronds, if you will. And do that to each side all the way around. And I'm going to use the same pearl paint to make a couple rings going around the top edge of this bottle here. I'm starting off with the biggest tool, which is the large pencil eraser, and they just fit perfectly, and then going down to the regular pencil eraser for the next ring, and then following up with the cotton end of the cotton swab, and then the stick end of the cotton swab for the last ring. And then I take the toothpick and I'm going to make random dots, making them more concentrated towards the rings, and then scatter them out as I go down the neck, and just stick them all around. I thought that was a really cool effect, almost like stars or bubbles. And I did fill in and put a dot to the top and the bottom in between each of the dots along the rings there. Now you do want to make sure that your underpaint is very good and completely dry before you top dot, but I went ahead and added a dot of the pearl paint right on the top of each of the rings all the way around, and it just really popped off the bottle. It almost made it look 3D. Super beautiful. But you do want to make sure that you have good and dry dots there. And I added one dot of the pearl paint right in between each of the little arms there, or fronds, all the way around. And then I wanted to do the same to the bottom that we had done at the top. You have to really make sure that your paint is dry so you can handle it properly. So I did the front, and then I would wait for that to dry, and then I would turn the bottle around. That way I could do the other side. And it's just the same steps as before, like we did to the top. And that wraps up this design. Again, this acrylic paint is able to be baked on in a regular oven, and it will form a permanent bond with the glass. You just need to follow your particular paint brand's specific instructions for that process. But for plaid, they say to place the bottle into a cool oven. You heat it up to 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 minutes, and then you let it cool down in the oven. And that's all you gotta do. Well, I hope you liked this tutorial. And if you did like this tutorial, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to my channel, I would love to have you as a subscriber. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to check out all my other dot painting tutorials. See you real soon. Bye now.